thanks for attending our facilities meeting. We've got an exciting topic tonight. My name is Barry Christensen. I'm the president of the school board. Tonight, our format's going to be a little bit different than most school board meetings. We're going to run this a little bit more informal, a little bit more like maybe a town hall kind of meeting. The reason for that is we want to focus on one topic and make sure that we are effective in answering your questions, conveying the information on this one topic. It's a big topic. Tonight, Draw Collective is going to walk us through the designs, the plans, some of the considerations they put into the K through 5 elementary center that we'll be discussing tonight. I think you're going to see some really nice designs that they have. I think it's important to also remember that this is a byproduct, this is an outcome of the strategic planning process that we went through over the last couple of years, and I think some of you were probably involved in that. The idea of the facilities investments that we're making now, we're not doing those independent on their own. These are outcomes, academic outcomes, and drivers that we needed to fulfill some of the goals we have for these academic outcomes and some of the requests that we received from many of you. So when we look at this this plan and the outcome of our strategic plan, some things that were very clear were that at the elementary level, we need to be able to provide more equity, more equality, equal class sizes, okay, across the different buildings. We need to provide a more integrated curriculum across the classes, so we have better consistency, better academic outcomes for all of our students. Of course, safety is important, and you see how safety plays into the building design that we're going to look at tonight. And so there's a number of things that are really driving this that, from our perspective, have identified this as the best solution for our students. But Draw Collective, they're going to walk you through the details of that. We will take questions. They are going to get started. Periodically, we'll pause for questions. We may not have all the answers to the questions that you raise or even concerns, but what I do promise you is that we'll take note of those, we'll work on those, and we'll come up with the solutions that you're looking for. Okay? So I'm going to turn this over to Draw Collective.
Hi, everybody. I apologize. I'm going to probably swing to the board and to the audience a little bit, so if try not to ignore you here. My name is Cassie Renninger, and I'm a principal at Draw Collective, and I'm one of the architects working on the project. And behind me are several other folks who've joined me tonight, some of whom will also be presenting, and I'll ask that they also introduce themselves as they are presenting. I think that was a really good introduction to why we're doing the project. And what our main goals are for the project. And I think that some of you may have attended board meetings in the past. We've been presenting the project to the school board at the public meetings for several months, actually probably about 6 or so months that we've been giving regular updates to the board and presenting some of this content. And some of you may have attended some of those and seen what's been in the works. I know that we've sat and listened to comments from community members related to things that are concerns or questions. And some of those ones that we've heard so far deal with traffic, the character of the building and the site, the impact on the adjacent neighborhoods. What is the disruption during construction going to look like? The size of the school and the number of students has been something that's been raised. Educational opportunities, concerns around making sure that this building is designed for not only a school of the size that we're talking about, which is roughly 1,800 students, but also make sure that we're looking forward to the needs of the future and not just looking back at what you have today. And then, as it already has been mentioned, safety and security. And We hope to be able to address some of these questions, or at least give you an update on where they are in the process. But we also hope to be able to give you some things to be excited about with this project. So we're all here on the site. The white boundary here on the image is the limit of the property. The district is actually in the process of acquiring additional land. So not only is it the Neil Armstrong site, but it's the adjacent property that fronts onto King's School Road. So this is just kind of an overall image of the neighborhood. You can see that this dark yellow solid line is King's School Road. We anticipate that that is the main access drive to the new improved campus. Well, the pointer picked this moment to have a battery die, so I apologize. We also have access coming on the south of the plan from Berryman through Boyer and Murray, which is how the middle school is currently served on the site. So we have the primary access drive to our site coming onto, thank you, onto from at the intersection of King's School and Jasmine Drive, and then we'll have secondary access on the opposite side where there currently is access today. One of the things that has been mentioned is the idea of the impact on traffic. And very early on in the project, the district retained HRG, and they're with us here tonight, to do a traffic study. And they will do counts of various intersections. And so I'm going to ask Ginny to give us a little bit of an overview of where that's at.
Good evening, hi. I'm Ginny Loney, representing HRG. We're the site civil. I personally am a landscape architect and involved throughout the process of this design, whether the various approvals that we need down to the specific details and construction documentation. So tonight I'm kind of representing the project in its entirety and many specialists that we have at HRG. For this graphic up here, Cassie mentioned that it's part of the traffic study. We, as part of all these approvals, the one that we look at more the context of the site is for traffic analysis. So we're looking at various intersections. There are some smaller circles up there surrounding all sides of the school that are intersections that we were asked to analyze within our traffic study. The three larger circles with the yellow boxes were the ones that are showing potential impacts that were under further investigation to verify what may be needed there, if anything, to accommodate the proposed circulation for the new school. Can I ask any questions? Anybody have any questions about the traffic?
Do you have counts from your preliminary count on King's School Road?
Not tonight. We're still in the process of finalizing that report.
But you did it already.
We did our counts. I don't know them off the top of my head, but we're working at finalizing that report submission.
When can we expect the results of that?
I live on King's School. So we'll need a follow-up of when that could be issued for a public piece for review.
On the
Yeah.
traffic study, have you taken into consideration the King School Road side, where you've got that nasty bend coming around where the guardrails are?
Yes.
That's a blind road coming up the hill, but I realize further on up the hill, Jasmine, is going to be the entrance. But the school bus coming down, it's going to have a lot hard time trying to make that bend, because we all know school buses don't blend and flex all that well.
Correct.
That's going to be a tough bend. Are you
We-
going to work something with the property owners nearby?
We've analyzed that road, and we're still verifying the conditions of that, so that will be part of the report and looking at conditions, counts, and what's proposed and collaborated with the municipality of Bethel.
Okay.
So-
Also, is that the state road?
Or PennDOT? No. No.
That is, okay, so you don't, are you looking possibly down the road necessary? to wind that thing?
That broke up.
That is a blind bend.
So part of those proposals will be in that report. Again, we're still in the process of evaluating all those improvements. I'd like to proceed, I know that traffic is an important item, but giving you more context to the site and the design will help you understand the conditions.
All right, thank you.
I know it's not a state route, however, it does function as a collector. And through your traffic impact study, have you determined whether King School should be widened or any site distance improvements? Because at the top of that hill, a crest is not an ideal location for a new intersection, especially with a lot of school buses.
I can tell you that evaluation of existing King School and site distances are part of the proposal. I cannot give you any final answers from the report at this time, but it's included.
One more
Yeah.
question.
I-
Have you reached out to Sandy Young over at PennDOT to see if you can need any help with that?
So I wanted to, I'm going to answer that with a different statement. The municipality has a traffic engineer, Gateway Engineering,
Okay.
who is the municipality's representative in the analysis, and the district has a traffic engineer who is HRG. So those two traffic engineers are coming at it from both the municipal perspective as well as the school district's perspective to, first, they determine the limits of the study, what all needed to be investigated, and then the manner in which the investigation would be done. So everything that HRG is doing, and as they make that submission, it's all in concert with the municipality's representatives, and it will be submitted based on, the counts and the warrants.
Okay, all right, thank you.
If I could just make one more, another comment. This is an example of what I mentioned in the beginning where you bring up some great concerns. I can tell you won't come up with a solution tonight. We could spend the next 4 hours just talking about the traffic study. We still won't have a solution. But the concerns you brought up were great, okay? And so let's put them on the list. This won't be the last meeting like this that we have. In fact, well, we'll have more meetings like this, but we have meetings every month, the second Tuesday. And as we learn more about the traffic study, things like that, some of these solutions, we'll be able to talk about those.
So just now as we kind of dial in a little bit closer to the existing site, this graphic here shows the parameters of the kind of the site property that will form the campus of the new elementary school. Up in the top right corner, you can see Neil Armstrong Middle School, and the blue box roughly represents the location of the proposed elementary school. It's fairly faint on here, but there's a line that kind of runs north-south in the vicinity of that blue box. Everything to the right of that line is the existing property, and everything to the left of that line that falls within that red lasso is the property that the district's acquiring. And we've talked about how we'll be maintaining the secondary entrances over on Murray and Boyer, but then you can see the location of where the new site entrance would be at King School, which aligns with Jasmine. And just for reference, that the new building actually sits quite a bit lower than Neil Armstrong, and we'll talk about where it is in overall. But if you parked out in the parking lot and walked up the hill to the school, you were kind of basically at the floor level of where the proposed new elementary school would be. So you can see that it actually sits quite a bit lower on the site than what the existing building does. So this is a conceptual site diagram of the site, and just kind of, the same orientation. The new main entrance is on the left off of King School Road, and the two existing driveways are on the right-hand side with the existing Neil Armstrong Middle School in the upper right portion. One of the things that, as we start to develop the site plan for this new elementary school, we want to take into consideration the best location for the building so that it accommodates the size of the building, the distinct traffic patterns that will exist around the building, things like pedestrians, students, parents dropping off and picking up, buses dropping off and picking up, staff parking, event parking. So all of those major circulation paths are a very big part of figuring out how to site a building and develop the site. And Jenny's going to explain some of that to you, but I want to also point out that there's a lot of other stuff that goes onto the site as well, such as play spaces and outdoor learning spaces. And then also like pragmatic issues like receiving and utility service area. So with all of those things factored in, the most logical place for the building was kind of in the middle of the site. And that kind of nestled the new proposed building into the hillside. And we are proposing a 3-story building where the building has 2 at-grade entrances. So the lower level is down on the kind of south end of the building, and this is going to be adjacent to the bus drop-off and pickup area. That actually comes in at the lowest level of the building. The middle level is accessed from the upper side, and then the 3rd level is completely above grade. So we're able to really make the building more character of a 2-story building by nestling it into the hill. It's a little bit hard to see here on this graphic, but there's a kind of a red arrow here on the left-hand side of where the building is, and that's our main entrance. So the idea is that you're coming in off of King School Road, and you'll use the main driveway, and you'll be facing the new building. It'll be, which is a really important safety consideration, is to know where you're going, to have a very clear path for how to get there, and then to also be able to distinguish the different traffic patterns that will be taking place on the site. Jenny, if you want to go ahead and jump in on details.
So the nestling into the site in the center, that's both on a topography standpoint. There's a lot of topography over the site, as well as helping us utilize this space for the program, the circulation, the amount of parking needed in those play spaces. So to kind of get into the diagram a little further, thinking about safety, the way that the site's designed, emphasizing a pedestrian focus, and then the experience for visitors coming to the site and entering the site, whether daily or for a special event. We've taken that all into consideration. In this diagram, the blue represents the bus circulation. The majority of the buses will come from King School, a few may come from Boyer, but we're pulling them into the lower level, as Cassie mentioned, at the site, giving them a long distance to come down that blue path and circulate in kind of a bus drop-off pickup zone. In the morning, because of the sequencing of buses, they'll come in at different times. They will loop around in that blue path and drop off immediately at the curb. In the afternoon, because of the way that they want to dismiss students and kids knowing where their buses are, they will line up in the parking that's shown there. It's a little faint, but it's along that wider gray pavement area. If buses aren't queued in the first run of buses, they'll create like a caterpillar along that longer blue line. Again, it's intentional to keep the bus circulation separate from visitors and parent areas. Again, so that lower level is buses.
And just to elaborate a little bit on that, the buses, as they're unloading in the morning, will be lined up along the curb, and as they're picking up in the afternoon, there'll be spaces for approximately 25 buses to be parked, and then those students to be dismissed into those buses. Those buses will leave, and the next batch of buses will come and load. So, you know, the bus area has been very thoughtfully and rigorously discussed to, you know, make sure that it's working both at the morning and at the afternoon, and from a traffic standpoint, to be sure that we can get buses off of those neighborhood roads and onto the site as quickly as possible.
So,
Can I ask a question? I'm up here. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I have 2 questions. I have heard that there are not enough spaces for an entire school event. Is that correct? enough parking
Can we,
spaces.
can we get through the overall
Well-
organization before?
Well, my next question has to do with the buses. So you're telling me that the buses are going to be, like, I'm very concerned about my student getting, especially if I'm a kindergartner, learning where to go and having all these buses out there, like the safety of it. I mean, you're gonna have a ton of buses. So how is it going, like, who is going to be sure that these kids are getting on the exact buses? Because those teachers are on contract, so they're not gonna be out there. I know there's some that have bus duty, but you're not going to get every teacher making sure all these students are on there. Given, actually, I know that the teachers would, and I know that they would do it in a heartbeat to make sure those students are safe. But how are you making sure that every student is getting out there to these buses in the best way? Like, what is your organization on that?
Well, a lot of what's happening inside the building will be an administrative thing. It's not an architectural solution. And I know that the administration has had numerous conversations. I don't know if you want to jump in now or just wait until the end and then get into that. But I think there's two things. There's the safety outside and the way that the buses are circulating and this manner of having the buses drop off and pick up, which has been very successful at other school districts as well. This is a common way to both arrive and dismiss. Now, with that said, there is some effort on the inside of the building that the administration and teachers and the various folks, it's a personnel issue to make sure that buses are called. And the idea with the bus stalls is that if your student is riding bus 13 is always going to be parked in the same stall in that bus area at the end of the day. So it's not going to be a free-for-all with the buses being all over the place. The stalls, this isn't going to make it to the board. The stalls are going to be. Oh, you're good. You're good with green. There, the green's got a battery now. Okay, so these stalls are in alignment so that the buses will queue up against in like a parallel configuration, and the doors will face the school. It's been designed so that as buses come in, they can actually peel into their stall. So let's say that the first wave of buses is 25 buses, and there's buses 1 through 25. Bus 3 is always going to park in the 3rd stall. Bus 4 is always going to be in the 4th stall. So the intent is that the buses are in a very organized way outside of the building and a very consistent way for safety.
And they leave all at one time in that first wave.
Yeah, then those 25 buses will leave the site, and the next 25 buses will show up, and they will once again park in the same dedicated spaces. So I know that there's probably some internal questions. I think that I heard in what you're saying about concerns with, how the kids get sorted inside the building, and I think that there's I think that there has been a lot of conversation with that. I think that the administration is still working through some of those details and has about 2 years to figure out that process is going to work. But go ahead.
I'll happily do a 30-second quick answer to that question. I think it's a pretty good question that we appreciate, and it's a question that's kept the administration sleepless for several months trying to work out a plan. We've taken it all the way to our federation. We had preliminary conversations about changing contract language, which they've agreed to. So we're going to have teachers, homeroom teachers, escort their kids to the buses at the end of the day. So there'll be an adult that will take her or his homeroom out to the bus.
Okay, but then I get that. But how, I don't understand how they're going to get on. Okay, so one homeroom teacher is bringing their class up.
Yes.
Okay, so part of their class is on the first 25 buses. Now, how long is that going to take to load and get rid of? Then to bring in another 25 buses, what are my kids doing inside the building?
So
How much time is that?
we've added onto our schedule an afternoon homeroom, so the students will be in a homeroom at a certain time as the staging begins.
So that you're adding a homeroom. So does that mean my kid's day is going to be longer?
School day, no,
Academics.
no.
So how are you adding?
We're going into the teacher time, called unassigned time in the contract.
So my kids are not staying in school any longer, but
So if we can go to the next type of circulation on the site, and go ahead, Jenny.
We have a question.
I was just wondering, how many buses are going to be needed to dismiss 1,800 students? Because let's just say there's 100 buses, and I would assume there would need to be more. So my question would be, from the dismissal time of the first 25 buses to the dismissal time of the next, or the last 75 to 100 buses, what time frame are we looking at there? Okay.
It's not 100, it's significantly less than that, it's about 55. So we're talking 2 waves. 2 waves, and there's a second staging area up there on the corner that'll be for the short buses. They'll stage off the gym entrance, so that'll be, all the big buses will be downstairs and the short buses will be upstairs.
And we were wondering if they were going to be on like the same bus, or if my kindergartner and second grader.
Yes. Same. Yeah, the runs won't, I mean, the runs are still the runs going to different neighborhoods. The buses will stay the same. No. No, it's just, it's
Okay, thank you.
by neighborhood.
We were like, how many buses are we going to have?
No.
So the other bus location is up here, and there's a secondary access over the school here. The other circulation that we spent a lot of time considering durations, queuing, space was for parent drop-off and pickup. So the purple denotes the location of the parent, again, working towards separation. There's an elevation change between the purple and the blue here as well. The parents would come in, have a direct access to this parking lot and kind of serpentine through the parking lot. The drop-off would be staffed and at the front of the school at that main entry. The other colors that are in here are visitor parking in orange and then some staff parking in the blue.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that there are a significant number of parking spaces during the day that will be held open that could be used at pickup if parents are picking up their student and want to walk to the door. But also if there's a daytime event, there's quite a bit of additional parking. The parking also in an event situation will use all of the parking spaces that we're constructing in front of the school. We have a parking to the right-hand side of the school that's being constructed. And then the bus area will also function as overflow parking on off hours. And then, you know, any of the parking that is existing up at NAMS will also be available.
One thing to note about the parking and potential for drop-off, there is, it's hard to tell here, but there's a pedestrian corridor here that leads directly to the school. But if you're parking in the spaces, you'll have a nice access away from the main circulation and drop-off zone that a parent and a student could walk along that path.
I think for both the parent and the bus, one of our driving goals has been to try to allow the traffic to move off of the roadways as much as possible. And this driveway here is actually designed as a 3-lane with 2 lanes coming in and 1 lane coming out. So buses can be, you know, lined up if needed, clear back here as well as parents. So, you know, we're trying to make the on-site queuing for both of those kind of drop-off and pick-up traffic patterns as long as possible. Another thing on the site from a safety standpoint is that, you know, we're really contemplating locations of gates to restrict traffic, not only, you know, as needed on off hours, but even during the day. So this front drive and this front parking lot and circulation would be open during the day as appropriate for, you know, visitors and students to be able to come and go from the school as is needed. but the whole bus area will be gated off during the school day. So we don't anticipate traffic back here. We also have, this is the existing Murray Avenue entrance to NAMS. The way that the building is configured, we're actually able to keep this route from in on Murray and out on Boyer open during construction. And at the end of construction, it would remain. So this route is able to stay open during the day. And this piece where the blue dashed line can be gated off as well. A couple things that we haven't mentioned yet on this overall is that we do have playgrounds. We have 2 large playgrounds associated with the building. There are these pink areas. So there's one down here on the lower level and one up here at the upper level. We're actually designing those playgrounds a little bit differentiated so that the playground at the lower level is designed for the younger students and the playground at the upper level is designed for the older students, just to make sure that we're considerate of their, what they like to play on, but also safety standards for their play. We talked about in the beginning of the presentation about outdoor learning spaces. This area that's in between the 2 classroom wings is being designed as a very large environmental classroom. Where it's located allows it to be, secured because it's very protected inside the classroom wings. It also is accessible on 3 sides from within the building, and then it will spill out at the end of the at the wing here. We'll have some fencing and gates, and that kind of introduces the opportunity for access to the wetlands and streams that are over here. So we're actually designating space over on this side as well that can be used as an extension of that outdoor learning space.
Part of the topography we talked about in that nestling really is helping these playground spaces and the outdoor learning be separated from any visitors, whether that's drive access or visibility. The terrain or other design features are really keeping those students separated from more the public spaces. One other thing to note here on one of the aspects of design is stormwater management. There are requirements with the state to account for new impervious areas and the impacts on the site. So this larger blue area is denoting where we're going to have a stormwater basin. It literally sits significantly lower than the bus drop-off as it's removed from students and play areas. There is also an underground stormwater area and another area of parking to account for a separate drainage area. We've included some conceptual renderings of the building and the site. These are all still in development. As was mentioned, we're still in the process of design. But this view, I think, is an important one to understand where the building sits relative to King School Road. So this is basically King School would run east to west on this slide. This would be our new driveway coming down to the school, and this thing down here at the bottom, it's not real easy to see in this image, but that represents the location and the height of the school relative to King School. So it's a very unassuming way that the building is sited within this area. A couple other conceptual renderings. This is a shot of what the vision for the front entrance is. So this would be the parent drop-off loop here, and this zone right in front of the building would be the area for drop-off. We have the main entrance over here on the side where we would have a secure vestibule. And then behind this area is a large group instruction. So one of the reasons that it's located in this area is, one, for events. So if you are coming for an assembly during the day, this space is convenient to the entrance and is accessed through the secure vestibule. But also this space will make a nice place for aftercare or before care right here adjacent to the entrance. For context, to the left of the screen is the access that continued, that would be gated towards the service receiving and the one large playground. And to the right, there's terrain, and that lower other playground sits off to the right.
And these are just some additional views of that image, or of that area. This one happens to be looking at it at night. And then this is kind of looking more as a bird's eye. And you can see the neighborhoods kind of surrounding the school. This is Neil Armstrong sitting here up on the hill. This is our proposed new building sitting a little bit lower on the site. The bus drive that we talked about is this area here, kind of right to the below the building. And then this is the parking area in front of the main entrance, which is facing us. So you can see that there's quite a bit of topography from the neighborhood that's above the school and then the neighborhood over here to the right. And we actually have a little bit of a site section here. This is just a diagram. This is the site plan, and you can see this red line. This red line is functioning like a cut. So if we were cutting through the earth, you can see here that the neighborhood up here on Palomino Drive sits quite a bit above the building, and then over here on Wallace. And you can see that, you know, we're actually pretty far away from the property lines as well. And in the background, you can see how NAMS actually sits up a little higher than the existing school. I think the other thing that this illustrates is like the step between the 2-story portion on the left and the 3-story portion over here on the right.
What we're still working on, and it's not illustrating this section, is landscaping and buffer requirements. So there will be some buffering up at the higher elevations, and then you have the stream corridor, which we're not impacting, that has all that existing mature growth on it.
So you can see on the site plan, all of this dark green is representing that mature existing growth along the stream.
So through the process, working with the district teachers, they've had meetings with students to kind of understand what we want this space to be and what learning opportunities there are. We were trying to provide inspirational images that helped us either identify what they did or didn't want. So up here on the board are various imagery, the landscaping at the top, trying to create different zones for different types of landscaping depending where it sits adjacent to the building. Outdoor classrooms, what do they look like? What do they feel? What do those kids sit on? Are some of the lower left imagery. Trying to capitalize on the requirements for stormwater and being able to make students aware are some of the images with the water on the top and what kind of access do they have to that, or what type of science and other learning opportunities can we create around that, giving them access to nature. We've created this site that's nestled in, and we're trying to emphasize a park-like condition and give them access to nature, both daily and or as they enter the site through classrooms. There's potential that teachers could have areas for gardening, hands-on, ways water flow, ways stone, influencing any of the elements of the earth. So again, just a sample of our inspiration. Some of the very critical design areas are the playgrounds. So these are some inspirational videos, images, deciding on what materials, how they interact with each other, how they interact with equipment, what the materials, how they are maintained, how they may influence the space, and or how natural versus synthetic they are. So again, this is just a quick brush at some of the imagery that we've discussed with the district. We're in the process of refining and working through those various elements in the playgrounds. And again, both for different age groups and appropriate for those age groups.
Yeah, I think that overarching on the site and landscaping design, it's designed to be very pedestrian friendly and very responsive to the adjacent neighborhoods, but also friendly for the students. And so, I think that there'll be playful characteristics of the site, but also it'll be an enhancement to the campus that's here today, with a lot more appropriate vegetation, natural barriers for safety, and fun spaces for the students to both play and learn. At this point, I think Dan's going to come up and talk a little bit about the building, but are there any questions to anything that we've gone over?
I have one question.
Uh,
Regarding the playground, is there going to be space for like kickball or soccer? Like, did you take into account like non-playground specific activities?
The question, I'm asked to repeat it if you're not on mic, but the question had to do with whether there were places for playing ball and running around. And the two playground, the short answer is yes. But the two playgrounds, we had a lot of conversations. The district actually engaged students in the questions, and we found that there were different needs for the different age groups. And so one playground will probably have a little bit more of that than the other playground just because of the age groups.
My question's about the slide you showed with all the landscaping and so forth. I'm a landscaper all my life. Are you going to put in irrigation or propose irrigation for all the landscaped areas?
No.
Why?
We're looking at more native species and trying to accommodate low maintenance. So the slopes, we're looking to have more of a meadow condition that wouldn't need to be mowed, stuff that's going to grow easily in the area.
You showed a lot of islands in the parking lots. Is there going to be trees in those islands?
Yes.
Are you going to irrigate them?
No.
They're going to die.
Understandably, that parking islands
Fact.
are not optimal for trees, but in some of the areas, instead of just islands, they're large bands to give them more space for roots. So we have accommodation requirements that we have to meet with the township. I totally agree, I'm a landscape architect.
That's what I was just going to ask.
We're not always giving the best situation for trees, but in this case, I think with the design, we're trying to maximize the root area, connect them to larger planting areas to help their survival.
Because it's one of my pet peeves whenever you see new projects and millions or thousands of dollars get spent on landscaping, then it sits there and withers away because nobody waters it.
Correct. There will be
Thank you.
requirements in the initial establishment as well to help them.
You're a landscape architect.
Correct.
That's great.
I think Jim Jenkins is looking for a contract. I do have a question. My concern is mostly the stormwater management pond. Are you going to maintain that at 2 inches for Allegheny County? Because I believe that's what the plan is for us. Everybody else is 1 inch of stormwater. My other concern is that pond running along Stoltz Road, along that edge, along that creek line? Does anybody know?
So it's difficult to see here, but there's a blue line of the stream. There's already a basin here. So we're not running parallel to that. We're offset from that, very close to the existing soccer field that's there. We are meeting all requirements of Allegheny County. It's not intended to be a wet pond, so there will be a portion of time during a heavy rainfall that there will be water there until it absorbs down through. We've submitted our stormwater reports. They're under review, and so we will make sure that we're complying with all requirements.
Okay. Our concern is because I know, going back to, no disrespect to my neighbors up on Below Terracing, because the pond wasn't constructed early on, that from Brightwood Road down, that's pretty much why that creek flooded out, because the developer hadn't done the right job. So I just want to make sure that, especially for the residents on the lower end, they don't experience the flooding that we had. And basically is pretty much why the trolley stop got flooded with 7 feet of water.
Right.
But then again, now the infrastructure for the sewage plant, that's also coming along, feeds the main line of Stoltz Road too. So that's going to be improved eventually?
So we're looking at our options for sanitary. Potentially that's going to connect on the right-hand side, but we're working with the municipality to evaluate those flows and the requirements. If it doesn't work to the right, we will come up to King's School Road. So that's still under review.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other site-related questions before we move on to the interior?
Yeah, I had a quick question. Are there going to be sidewalks, like from the main entrance, for anyone in the neighborhoods if they wanted to walk their children there?
Can you repeat that louder, please?
Oh, sorry. So are there going to be sidewalks at all from the main entrance? Or is it just, you mentioned like 2 ways, or 2 lanes in, 1 lane out?
So currently, there's no sidewalks. along the bus route here. We have the potential, we had considered it, but they're trying to minimize because of security where pedestrians are located on the site.
So there's no way to walk into the elementary school? No. Oh, I'm sorry. So there's no way to walk into the elementary school?
Oh, I
Yeah.
apologize, yeah, it's really hard to see, that's why I didn't have reference. See that little thicker line? So it comes on, King's go into here and down into the site, not through the bottom portion of it. So you
Yep.
can't have an entire loop through the site.
I'm sorry. There will be a sidewalk on Jasmine? That is the road coming in from King's School?
It would not be on Jasmine, it will be on the school district's property that, up at the intersection with Jasmine. So we have a pedestrian sidewalk that goes from King's School to the front door of the school, and we also have one that comes in off of Boyer to the school. We do not have one on the lower bus loop, but we have sidewalks to the school from the neighborhood to the left and the neighborhood to the right.
I have a question. What happens to the existing school? Yeah.
Yeah, so are we saying mothballed is the right term? The idea is that it's not going to be used as a school. It will be used during construction, though, as well as the elementaries will be maintained during construction, and then it will be closed up.
So just as, I'm sure many people have a question around what's going to happen with all of the existing buildings. So one of the next steps that we're working on is assembling some committees with a lot of different kinds of representation on it to talk about some options, put together some options. We'll present those options. But it's not something that we're going to decide like the board by ourselves. We are having a broader committee from the rest of the community to help identify what's best for Bethel Park.
Can you wait for a mic?
So with that, earlier we talked about some terrain features that were security to make a perimeter from the school and the students and the surrounding neighborhoods, but I guess the concern is that NAMS building being so close to the elementary center, if it's used for another secondary use, how do we secure that area?
The NAMS is not intended to be used at this time. Is that what you meant?
So in the future, if it does have a secondary use, like they said, we're going to have future meetings and discussions and decide.
I think it's one of those things that, we, at this point, there's no intended use because we have no idea. So it's not really an answer or a solution we can come up with yet. I mean, it's a question, but it's a question that'll hang out there until we decide, is there another purpose for it, or do we just get rid of it?
So I have a question going back to the sidewalk. So you said there will be a sidewalk on the main entrance. So is it going out to the intersection, is that going to connect with the existing sidewalk that's on King's School Road heading towards Stoltz? Well, yeah, that's what I mean. Are you going to add to connect to that sidewalk path?
So we currently have it shown to the intersection, and we're still evaluating the improvements at that intersection and what happens there, so.
I'm sorry, did you say 2 or through?
2. So we're,
So stopping at Jasmine.
currently that's, at King's School, essentially.
So,
We got 2 lights.
I have a question. For the area below, looks like the bus line, is that you saying that's going to be utilized for part of the school too, that buffers up against close to the houses that are on the one side of Wallace? So you're saying that's all going to be used by the school or not?
I think you're talking about this little indication here. Is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, everything below, between the road where Wallace is and where the bus is.
Yeah, so most of this area is steeply sloped, so it will not be able to be occupied. We have a small area right here that's adjacent to the stream and the wetland. with the intent that a small group of students could come out and, just kind of investigate the wetland as part of a class. But the rest of this area would not be used during school.
Okay, so you mentioned we have a very walkable elementary campus. However, it sounds like all of the neighborhood behind that and all of King's School is still going to be bused, because if there's no sidewalks balanced for walking to the school, Saddlebrook, King's School, and Jasmine's all still going to need to be bused.
That's probably the case, is that the district plans on busing all of those students. Not to say that they have to, but I think the municipal sidewalk arrangement is something outside of the purview of our site.
Say, one question on the busing. We do today, and I'm not sure if somebody asked who has children in school or not, but we bus 100%. And we did that a few years ago especially because of the high school, because there's so much density of high school age children driving, and such a concentration of people then walking on the sidewalk, that it just seemed like a very unsafe condition, especially in the winter when sometimes sidewalks aren't cleared. So we made a decision about 3 or 4 years ago to bus everybody, just because of some of the safety risks with the high density driving around the schools.
So I live right in the area there on King's School, just 2 houses from where entrance is going to be. And there is a house behind me that was part of the purchase. Is that house going to remain there? Are you going to sell that piece off? Is it something that the school district's going to keep?
Still working on that one. We haven't even closed on the property yet. But I don't believe that house is in any livable, it's not in good condition, so I don't think.
That's my understanding, but it affects me and my next, actually 3 of us on that, so we'd like to know.
Yeah, we have no plans to do anything with the houses yet, but we have had that conversation.
So my ground, and maybe I heard, but there's potential for 1,800.
You're cutting out, so I'm going to repeat your question. I believe that the question was that the maximum capacity you're confirming that it's 1,800, and that's correct. And we're going to talk a little bit, if we move on to the building, about how the building is organized as a school within a school concept. So we'll talk a little bit about the way that the building's broken up.
I apologize, I have a sore throat. My question's more for the playground. If there's 1,800 kids in the building, let's say there's 3 lunch periods.
Yes.
That's 600 students per lunch.
Yes.
What is the capacity of these playgrounds? Each playground would have to be able to accommodate 300 students.
So the way that the playground, the recess and lunch is going to work is that 300 students are essentially going to flip-flop. So we anticipate that there will be more like 150 in the cafeteria. So it'll be 300 students will be in a combination lunch, recess, and half of them will be in the cafeteria, half of them will be outside, and then they'll flip. Yeah, and we have, internally, we'll show you this on the plan, but we've got 2 cafeterias, one for half the building, the other for the other half, and then we've got 2 playgrounds that correspond. So the 2 playgrounds and the 2 cafeteria spaces essentially flip-flop over 3 periods.
Okay, so my question then is, we have 1,800 students in the building. How many parking spots did you say are designated outside?
Just as a clarification, I think the capacity is 1,800. Dr. Walsh, what's the current enrollment in K through 5? It's something less. Was it 1,400?
It's less than 4. It's less than 4. It's about Okay, 1,400. so saying we have 1,400 students, going to this building instead of 1,800 students. How many parking spaces are outside?
I believe that there's somewhere between 450 and 500 parking spaces on the site.
Okay, so where does everybody else park when they want to come for back-to-school night, or they want to come for,
So the bus area.
how many cars can fit in that?
So
Two?
I want to clarify, though, I think that maybe you want to jump in.
Sure, I'll be happy to answer that. I think that, much like that was working well during COVID, we would be staging those over several nights, so that there wouldn't be an event that we can foresee where everybody would be invited at the same time.
Okay.
There's a question up here.
If you could just clarify, I think you said there are 450 parking spots on the site. So how many teachers do we have?
There'll be about 90 to 100.
So 300 for other use.
Put Neil Armstrong's current school then be made into such as like a parking lot or a parking garage for that matter of some sort?
I'm going to just echo the prior comments. What happens at Neil Armstrong hasn't been determined yet. There's a lot of potential uses of that area. And so, anything that's decided would probably warrant some level of effort up here on this site to convert it to that use. So,
level at NAMS while construction's going on in the new building?
that wasn't very clear. Could you either repeat it or? Yeah, so I'm not sure that we are there yet, but normally municipalities do have sound ordinances, so we would be following those ordinances. Not at this time. I don't have the information to be more detailed at this time.
And when would those details come to be? Like, when should I check back to talk about decibel levels and monitoring? My son will be at NAMS. I want an impact.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have a definitive answer for when you can check back, but I will say that there are some, it isn't right outside there is quite a bit of distance between the building and the construction site, and most of the academic spaces are located on the opposite side of the building from where our construction site. So I appreciate your concerns, and we'll research that. I don't have any answers for you at this time.
About the pollution caused from the construction site and how that might impact NAMS? Are they going to be monitoring air quality?
I can't answer what a monitoring program would look like at this building, but there will be pollution controls in place as part of the project.
Will that be something better addressed at a later meeting when you're further down the line?
Yeah, I think that probably would be the case. Just for your reference, a couple of the people that are sitting back here behind us are construction managers. They'll actually, we've got Dan and Nancy with Macero. They were just recently hired by the school district. They will be on site during construction, and so part of that process is for them to be here and actively involved in keeping an eye on things, making sure that things don't go out of control, making sure that the people at NAMS have a resource that they can reach out to and say, hey, I've got concerns. But, these guys are just getting their heads into it, and but their presence on site will help alleviate a lot of those concerns that you're raising.
I just have one more question. For the construction workers that will be working there, I'm assuming that they're going to be working at the same time as the kids will be in school. Will they all have some type of clearances since they'll be so close?
I can speak to that.
My name is Nancy Gorgas, and I will be your project manager for Massaro. I will be the person that's currently going to be working on the project with DRAW and with the district. And we have things in place, things that we do. When we work in a school property, clearances are a huge part of our process. We make sure that we get all of the clearances that are required. We make sure that the appropriate people are monitoring that and giving us approval for that individual to work on site. We actually badge individuals so that we can see right away that that is an individual that's been approved, they've gone through safety requirements, that they're okay to be on our site. Regardless of whether this is we're next to NAMS, so we consider it just the same as being in a building. And then to address some of the comments about how our construction site will affect the work of your building and the students in that building. We understand we are guests on your property, and your primary function is to educate your children. So making sure that we do not disturb the education of those students is extremely important to us. We meet with the principals and the district staff on a weekly to every other week basis so that we understand what's going on in your building and what we are doing in construction, so that we're coordinating that information and we're making sure. If you've got testing going on, we're not going to be jackhammering something. We're going to be taking care of making sure that we are taking care of your students. And then we have we'll have site managers. We have 2 different individuals that will be on site on a daily basis that your staff will be able to contact immediately if any issue is going on so that we can address it immediately.
I just had a positive comment. I saw a lot of the playground pictures had like the bouncy floor instead of mulch. I think that's important, especially for little kids, and those are our favorite playgrounds to go to now.
Yeah, that is what we're designing. Thumbs up. How about 2? No. Okay, there, thank you. Okay, well, if we can always circle back to more site-related questions at the end. We actually have a couple boards too, so if you want to come and see where the trees are going to be planted, well, we invite you up at the end. But Dan's going to go ahead and jump in here and talk a little bit about the building itself.
Well, Dan's getting set up. These are really good questions, and maybe we don't have 100% of the answers solved yet, but we're in the design phase. And when you're doing construction, there's 2 pieces. There's design and build. It's always good to have your design worked out before you start building. That's what we're trying to do here. And so your questions, even if you don't have the answers now, these are the things that we're doing. We're reviewing the designs, asking questions, interrogating the designs, and trying to optimize them. And all these questions help us do that. So even if it seems like you wanted more specificity, more clarity around your questions, it may not be the right time to answer those yet, but the DRAW team will be working on those.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Daniel Engen. I'm one of the leaders over at DRAW. I see some familiar faces from some of our previous presentations, and for everyone new, I just thank you for spending the time with us today to talk about this. It is a community project, and it's important. Right off the bat, the school district engaged us, and one of their first things was to make sure that we were a caring kind of company, and we had a good focus on what the community's needs are here in Bethel Park. Every school district is an individual school district. They're all different. All the buildings that get built from one district to the other, they all are different. And it's really because they represent the educational format that's trying to be put forth in each district and the community and what their requirements and needs are. I have a lot of conversation tonight about construction and some of the disruption and things like that. I wanted to also add to that the school district in their master planning process that they spent a couple years working on chose this option over other options. The other options were essentially to renovate 5 or 6 buildings and do additions at each one of those possible additions at each one of those locations. It was a little bit more expensive, but also the amount of disruption is much more significant than doing one project that is a standalone building and not actually having contractors in this building with the kids and the teachers for a couple years. That's typically what gets done. And so I think we're lucky to be able to get the chance to plan a new building. And then I get a little bit of fun tonight because when you're planning a new building, we have a new suit of clothes that we can make however we like. And when I say we, I mean the school district personnel. And we've been working with them for about 6 months or so, having teacher meetings on a weekly basis, going through working with all the staff members. We've been visiting all of the buildings and sitting with the staff, bringing librarians together and bringing counselors together and trying to envision what this school building would be like and how we can come together in one building and actually make a marked improvement overall for all the students and all the staff. And I get a little bit of a chance to talk about that tonight. This is one of the floor plans. This is the middle floor. So Cassie presented earlier, essentially the building is like a layer cake. It has a middle layer, a lower layer, and an upper layer. The middle layer is sort of the heartbeat of the school from the point of view that it encompasses the main entrance that is right here on the left-hand side of the page. And this is where the student drop-off is for parent drop-off and pickup in that big parking lot that you saw on the site. And then down below here, these are the classroom wings. The busing is down here on this lower level. So a little bit about how to organize a building like this. We've been through multiple plan options over the process here. And one of the things that we try to do is we try to create a separation between the public areas of a building and the private areas of the building. We're sitting in a public area right now. Here we are, we're the public and we're in a big area. What we're not at is we're not in the classroom wing. Typically, when we do a modern school, we try to make some kind of separation. So after school activities and weekend activities, those classroom wings can be completely separated off from those kind of activities, keeps people from wandering through, maybe causing issues. But also, it gives us a chance to organize a building during the day for the students. It creates a scenario where the classroom areas, the general classroom areas where the kids spend most of their time are quieter. They're a different ceiling levels, they're a different kind of attention. It starts from the designing from the inside out, basically the student-teacher relationship in the classroom working its way out, and what kind of resources on a period-by-period basis do the student and the teachers really honestly need to be able to pull off a really great day for that student. And then overall, what are the special spaces and the public spaces and the support spaces that those students need to visit during the day or during the week to be able to do educational format outside of the classroom. So orientation purposes, this is the front entrance. This box here that you see is the administrative wing, where we'll have a secure vestibule and controls. We call that, you've probably seen in some of your other buildings, some people refer to as a mousetrap, where you come in, but you're not really in the building yet. You have to produce your credentials and possibly wait to be able to be received. Or maybe you're just dropping something off and you don't actually get a chance to go into the building. You're just going into that first tier of security. I'm not going to talk too much about security because that's something that is really, could you please hold your questions until I get through? Thanks. Security is something that is intrinsic with how the school district would like to operate the building internally, and we generally try not to talk about it in super detail in public format. But there are some key things that I think are important that everybody should know, and as parents, you want to know some of those things too. Is the front of our building secure? Are those people inside the building protected? And the answer is yes, and there's multiple ways and levels of security that are being implemented. Up front also, we have the main nurse's office. This dashed line here is what we're calling the park path. So one of the things that we also do when we're designing a building is, especially at the elementary level, we like to look as much as possible at what the main educational formats are inside a building. In this particular case, we're doing a lot of STEM activities, a lot of ecology. So we have a theme that's partially based on that, and we're calling it the park theme. And this main avenue is almost like a main street. It's our main park path. On the upper portion of the plan, this is the main lobby. This is a large group instruction. There's seating for about 600. And this is the music wing here. In the middle are 2 cafeterias adjoined with each other and sharing a kitchen with separate serving lines for both sides, and then a large gym format, your typical full-size gym. On the other side of the park path, we have a lot of the general classrooms. We have the general classroom wings, in this particular case, on the middle floor, the middle layer. It's a second grade wing and a third grade wing. One of the things you'll notice about the layout of the building is that a second grader doesn't walk through a third grader's wing to be able to go places, and vice versa. So if you're in second grade, third grade, or fourth grade, or fifth grade, or kindergarten, or first grade, really has no reason to go inside your wing. So this wing, we call these neighborhoods. Each one of these neighborhoods are broken up. This one is broken up into 3 houses. So there is a area in the corridor that those classrooms, it's like an activity area in the corridor that those classrooms focus in on, and it breaks up the classroom wing. This is not much longer than some of your other corridors in your other elementary schools. And so Cassie mentioned a school within a school. This is one of the ways we do it. So we have classroom, house, neighborhood, community, and then school. And a community might be a second and third grade would represent a community. So in this layout, we do have a connector from second to third grade. This is mostly a staff connector, so that when we have support staff like special education teachers, they can go back and forth. If we have a student who maybe is a second grader but is advanced in math, they can shoot across and take math over here on the third grade wing. Let's go ahead to the next slide here. This is the lower level of the layer cake, and on this level we have a primary gym. So this is a kindergarten and first graders gym. This is a gymnasium that is small, it's a lower ceiling, it's a movement gym. Something that we don't often get to do because usually it's sort of a gym, a cafetorium. It's a kind of space that's sort of has to solve every problem all at once, and it kind of never quite solves everything. It does a little bit good for everything. In this period case, we can actually design for the smaller kids, and the PE teachers have been working hard on really envisioning what that would be like. It'd be a completely different experience, rather than just assuming that everybody goes up to the big basketball court. How does that work when the kids are only, 38 inches tall? So here's a space that actually can respond to them. Also down at this level, we have a primary library. So there's a K-1 library down at this level too. So this is the kindergarten wing and the first grade wing. One of the things you'll also find on this lower level of the layer cake and the upper level of the layer cake is there's a principalship on every floor. So we actually have a principalship, which also includes a satellite nurses station. So the students and the teachers are never too far from administration as well as health needs. Along the park path, there are a lot of STEM-related activities. One of the things that the design does is we spend a lot of time trying to find ways to allow the school to educate outside of the classroom. It can be pretty boring for kids to sit in the room all day long for 6 periods a day, and it's a lot of work for the teachers to have to try to get everyone excited and switch from one subject to the other and things like that. And sometimes it's good to be able to have opportunities to go other places. And in other cases, the building can teach a little bit too and support that activity. And I mentioned ecology before. At this level, we actually have an outdoor learning center that's associated with this STEAM room right here. Science, technology, engineering, and math. We're calling it STREAM now too, so we have reading in there as well. So we have an outdoor patio area where they can spill out onto from that park path or directly from that stream room. And then we have an open courtyard area where we'll have some learning devices out there and opportunities for student groups. And then one of the things that we did is in that floor plan, we have sort of a bridge effect here where we have an open patio, but it's actually covered by the floor above. One of the problems that we have in Pennsylvania is, of course, the weather. And whenever we do an outside classroom, which we always get the request for, the problem is it rains a lot. And so in this particular case, we have a covered area that can bridge that gap. So if the temperature is reasonable, we can still go outside and have those kinds of activities. We have a planting garden over here that's also part of the curriculum that's just outside that space. This whole courtyard scenario is fenced in. And of course, this is the back of the building, so it is the private side of the building. The only thing that happens back here during the school day is busing, drop off, and pick up. Other than that, we're free to use the pavement. We're free to use this ecology space. We're also free to go just across the drive, the bus drive, and into the ecology area that Cassie mentioned that is along the natural wetlands. So it's all going to be fully integrated. This is at this level also, this is the K2 playground. And so the two playgrounds, as Ginny and Cassie mentioned, are styled a little bit differently because they're for different size students and different kinds of activities. Upstairs, at the top portion of the layer cake, 4th and 5th grade wings, we also have our main media center in this spot. This is also a special space, and one of the advantages of being able to come together as one school is we get some support from multiple librarians in the building, which rarely ever happens, and oftentimes they're traveling. In this particular case, we actually have 4 classroom settings of different nature. One of them is a stream room, and then another one is a typical enclosed classroom, and the other ones are open format or partially open format. And we have an outdoor learning center that is actually attached. It's like a deck area that's actually on top of the administration wing. So we can make a connection to the outdoors there too. Along the park path, one of the things that we've been working hard on the design is to make sure that natural light is a significant presence throughout the building. Almost all educational spaces have direct windows to the outside, and even in the corridors, as you're walking along the park path, we have windows to the outdoors. Natural light is proven to be a big stimulator and a big positive thing when it comes to education. And students spend a lot of time in the building, as well as teachers, and they need to be able to have that stimuli. A lot of the buildings that you have currently right now, we don't have that same opportunity. And so we really try hard as a part of that sustainability program in the design. This is just a little a blow up when you're looking at that middle portion of the layer cake, and I mentioned the park pathway and then the public side of the building. This is a large group instruction. Large group instruction is not the same as an auditorium. It's a little bit like an auditorium because it's got a big high ceiling and it's got sound controls and it's primarily made for, at this grade level, grouping musical performances, strings, band, choral. But one of the things that we do a little bit differently is we give it a flat floor. So as a contrast to the space that we're in today, we have fixed seating here. You really can't do too much. This is really unusable space during the day. If we wanted to do an indoor recess or something like that, this space would be used for that, but there's not a lot of space to run around and do movement. There's not a lot of flexibility. In this design, it's a telescopic seating scenario. The seats are very similar to a typical auditorium seat that you'd be familiar with, but they actually telescope back to the wall, just like a standard bleacher would in a gym, so that it allows us to have a big open floor. The other advantage is when you come to an evening performance, let's say you're coming to watch your students play their musical instrument. One of the things that we always are challenged with when it comes to the traditional auditorium is usually in the auditorium. There's a stage, and everyone's up on the stage, and they fill it full of the instruments and all the students. And here we are, parents, we're down here looking up. Well, if your student's a drummer, you're not going to see them. Or if they're in the third row back, you're not really going to see them. And we always want to be able to get a little video and pictures and things like that. It's really difficult. So what we do in the telescopic scenarios allows you, similar to this room, to be up in the air. So you get to be up and you get a good sight line to see your students while they're doing their activity. The flat floor also allows us to be flexible. So we could have a book fair, we could have recess, the ensemble space that would be the traditional stage. If we want to do a very large group, we can spill out further into the floor, and we don't have steps or an edge of a stage to hold us back from that scenario. So that should be a nice flexible space. As I mentioned, there are 600, just a little over 600 seats. It's enough to be able to have that community, the second and third grade or the fourth and fifth grade or whatever, 2 grade levels in there at the same time to do some kind of presentation if they want. It's really, you see the same thing. We're limited as to the number of seats that you can put in a space like this and really make it affordable, given the fact that you do those kinds of activities maybe only 4 times a year. And so what kind of space do we really want to build? Do we need to have a space that is big enough for 3,000 people that really is just a big open space that is relatively unused? Or can we make something that's functional for the program educationally on a daily basis, and then do multiple nights when it comes to theatrical events and musical events? I mentioned cafeteria. This is the K2 cafeteria, and this is the 3-5 cafeteria. They have, there's 2 serving lines for the 3-5 and 2 serving lines for the K2, and essentially they're backed up by 1 kitchen, so we get some economy of scale. Kitchen workers and freezers and refrigerators and all those things are combined, but our serving is separate. So we can easily get the kids through. As Cassie mentioned, it's essentially 150 kids at a time. They rotate through on each side. When they're done eating, the 150 goes out onto the playground, and then the next 150 comes in. That's a pretty typical scenario. That's nothing special to Bethel Park School. The large gym is a large gym with a divider, very traditional kind of scenario that you might have seen, although the PE teachers are really getting into the design of it, putting walking tracks and things like that in there, and really looking to create a gym that actually focuses a lot on the kinds of activities that they're doing, but is also flexible. This plan is a few days old. We actually moved the health classrooms down here that are also adjacent to that gym because those are all the same teachers. On this same park path, there's also a STEAM room here, a STEAM classroom show. And this is downstairs. I already explained this one, so I'm going to kind of buzz through that. And this is upstairs. I explained that too. The difference also upstairs is where the STEAM rooms are. Down below, upstairs, we have art rooms in that same location. So from a thematic point of view, as we're talking to the staff, we're talking about the kinds of educational programs that they're emphasizing on a grade level basis. And can the building teach? Can the building have a theme that represents what's going on in the building educationally, but also have a theme that is unique to Bethel Park aesthetically? And so we did come up with a park-like theme. And this is an early sketch of that concept. Essentially, we looked like a day in the park, 24 hours of being in the park. And what is it like to visit a park? You have sunrise, you have sunset, you might have a night, a starry night. And who are the users of the park? Well, they might be campers and hikers and foragers and climbers and so forth. One of the things that the school really wants to do is emphasize each neighborhood or each grade level independently. Right now, you might be familiar, I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that they get different t-shirts and they might get different names and things like that. The school hasn't decided what those will be here, but you can picture if you're first grade, we're the climbers, they'd have their green shirts and it said climbers on them with some kind of logo. And maybe second grade is foragers or bird watchers, and they've got a purple shirt. And so they represent their neighborhoods as a part of that, and we try to integrate that into the design. So I spent a little bit of time talking about ecology. This is, the plan is turned around, but it represents the park path and expressing a little bit about all the views and the accesses that we have to the outdoors on a daily basis. And so those what those arrows represent. And then we have the multiple outdoor access points, play areas, as well as the ecology areas shown on that plan. When you have a theme, one of the things it does is it helps you bring color into a building. It helps you determine, there should be a reason as to why things are what they are, rather than everyone sitting around looking at a bunch of color swatches and saying, oh, I like purple, and no, I don't like purple, I like orange. So we like to order a building if we can, and so we start to look at what colors would be present, that would be appropriate, and start to work through that. This is setting up colors by neighborhoods and what would be our format. Also working in the colors of the district if that's possible. In this particular case, it certainly could be. And then as a part of the forest concept, and I mentioned a little bit about light, we're talking a little bit about sunrise and sunset. That represents itself three-dimensionally in the building. One side of the building along the park path would have a sunrise theme, the other side would have a sunset theme, and in the middle is the starry night. We'll pick the colors from real life and bring them into the building. The way we address light and address the forest theme on all three layers of the layer cake, the lowest layer is going to represent the forest floor. The middle layer will have representation of the understory of the forest, and then the upper layer would have the forest canopy represented. And how light streams through a forest, how it is different at the lower levels versus up at the high levels. And then what are the creatures that inhabit a building at each one of those, or inhabit a forest at each one of those levels, will also get represented in the building too. This gives the teachers an opportunity to connect, and they can walk around the building with the kids, and depending upon what their educational format might be on a daily basis, maybe make some connections. Some of the things that go along with the park theme, stacked stone. We're all familiar with being in a state park, seeing the stacked stone railings or signage and things like that, and maybe some footbridges. And so we're actually in the floor patterns, we'll be doing a park path, sort of floor patterns. We'll allow the students to actually cross over footbridges where there might be faux water, and then we'll use some park themes when it comes to signage. You have to remember, this is for kids. This is not for us, right? Us older folks go, whatever. But the reality is, our goal is that we want the kids to feel special. We want them to enjoy their environment and not feel institutionalized, and have things that are relatable to them and a little bit fun. And it doesn't take too much effort on our part to include those kinds of things. So our team at DRAW have worked really hard at turning a lot of what I just got done talking about and rambling about into visualness. And I mentioned a little bit about the fact that the building teaches outside of the classroom, or offers locations where you can learn outside of the classroom. And this is a good example. So this is an image. If you came out of the lobby and you walked along the park path towards one of the classroom wings, just around this corner is the entrance to the second grade wing. These are called seat steps, or learning steps. And on this middle level of the layer cake, we'll have an opening in the floor that goes up to a skylight. We'll actually have trees in the space, and we'll have a faux canopy where we'll get the dappled light to come down. These are light rays just painted on the wall and done with acoustical treatment. And you can see a little bit of the park path coming through here and some stone represented. And so it's not Disneyland. The idea is that without a lecture about it, you could walk through, or a student could walk through, or an adult could walk through and say, hey, this is a nice building, this is different, this is interesting, and everyone can talk about the fact that Bethel Park is a beautiful school. If someone walked along with you and told you what the thematic portions of the building were about, then it might click for you. And then you might say, oh, I get it, I understand. So that's really the difference. It's a little bit of a subtle scenario. We have to do a lot of work to create a theme, and then it gets a little bit watered down in reality when you start to impart all those things. This is that same learning stair, just looking back towards the other way. The intention here is that it's large enough for a couple classrooms to get together and do a teaming activity. There's a teaching wall and a presentation board on that wall so that we can do an activity. Our goal is so that as you're walking through the building, you see learning. It isn't just closed up in a room. It's happening all over the place, and every nook and cranny we can get in a corridor or in a special space or under a stair, we're going to try to make an opportunity for a teacher to have a one-on-one with a student or a group of students to spend some time. This is if you were sitting on that learning stair taking a look, and this is a big presentation wall, and that's the presentation area. Up above here, you can see Susie right here. She's looking through and looking down at what's going on. This is an entrance just beyond that learning stair, is just to the right here in the image. And this is the entrance to the hikers neighborhood, in this period case, second grade. So we have a small group room here that's just off of that area. Part of all of this is wayfinding too. When you have any size building, when I talk to, we've been meeting with the staff and we're talking about the buildings that they have now, that you guys have right now, and kids can get lost just going around the corner to the restroom. Our goal is to try to make things usable from that point of view. And one of the reasons that kids get lost so easily is everything looks the same. They walk out and that same brown carpet is there everywhere, or the same tan walls are everywhere in the building. And so we'll use color as a signatory so that as you go through, you can clearly see that hikers are one color and you're going into the hikers. It's different than what another wing would be. And the students will be able to recognize that. A little bit further down the hall, one of the things you'll see in some of these images are representation of student works being displayed. One of our number one things is to try to celebrate for the individual students. They can see their work up in the classroom wings, out in the park path. When public comes to see, they come to a basketball game on our intramural sports night or something like that, you can walk through here and you can see what's going on in this school. Super important and a lot of fun. There's a lot of great things going on in this district. As we work our way a little bit closer, further down, this is one of the stream labs. And this is our Starry Night, actually, what happened in here. We have a special, almost like a curio scenario. There's a lot of interesting things going on in the stream lab. The students are making three-dimensional objects. There's electronics involved, all sorts of fun things. At each grade level, it's different. So we make a rotating display for those kinds of things. And then we have a little transparency from the hall into that exciting space. It's a quasi-art room. It's a quasi-project room. It's a quasi-team space, lots of different great opportunities. The administration is working hard to program those kinds of things into the building. A little bit closer into that presentation area. One of the things we also like to do is not all the spaces need to be big and tall. You want to go from a big, tall space down and transfer from one space to the other to get more intimate, get smaller, get quieter, and then open up into a larger gathering space, and keep doing that here and there. It helps with wayfinding, it helps with sound. Ultimately, one of our goals, of course, is to make it so when you are going down a classroom wing, It's generally quiet, even though there's a lot of activity going on. This is up on this upper layer cake, looking down. This is that learning stair that we've been looking at a few of those other images. You can see that we're learning under trees here. There's a skylight through here. Our dappled light is coming through. And this is the corridor with the staircase coming right down to that next level. And then we have peekaboos actually up here. You can, besides student work being presented, we have opportunities to be able to see what's going on from up above into the cafeteria area. And then this is the 4th grade entrance right here. This is a cafeteria. It was an early picture. You can see earth tones, trying to make a space that's warm, have some fun with color, and represent the theme in a space like that. We also have special learning spaces inside the cafeteria, so it can be used outside of cafeteria time. So you have that in the middle of the day, but you've got a morning time, you've got an afternoon time, and then we also have the opportunity to use the cafeteria for PTA events and other gathering. We could be doing a meeting like this in there. That's it for that. Our last slide was basically a description of what the schedule is for the project. So currently, right now, the district has undertaken a huge task, and the municipality has been working really hard along with us. You've heard a lot about talking about traffic and the approvals and things like that. No one entity, the school district or us or the engineers or the school district's engineers, are in control of all of those things. We work really hard as a team to communicate and present all the information and follow the rules and follow the codes to give everyone enough time to be able to solicit good conversation and make good decisions. And we have state approvals and things like that it just takes time. This is a very aggressive schedule from an approval point of view, trying to make sure that we get as many ducks accomplished, get our ducks in a row and get all those things accomplished. So the district is working towards completing this documentation phase of the design and all of the approvals by the end of the spring, and then trying to start construction in the summer. It's a 2-year construction process, give or take a month, but the goal is 2 years from next August to be open. Sorry, questions?
Just the square footage of the classrooms now compared to,
The square foot of a typical classroom is about 843 square feet.
compared to this year, like the buildings that they're currently in now?
That is significantly larger than some and slightly smaller than others.
Do you know which one's building-wise?
No, not off the top of my head, but we've been in all of the buildings, and it is a good size. Now, I say that the kindergarten rooms are larger. I don't remember what the number is.
Do they have bathrooms and stuff still in them like they do at the elementary level?
Kindergarten and 1st grade have restrooms inside their rooms. I didn't mention that on the floor plans, but in each one of the neighborhoods, we have groups of restrooms that are just outside the classrooms. So essentially, the students do not walk all the way down the hall or have to turn a corner and go to some other wing to use the restroom. There's a lot of restrooms in this building, but they are all local to those classroom houses to try to make it simple. Our whole goal is to try to keep the kids learning and keep them active and keep them with that class in the classroom setting as much as possible.
And you had arrows pointed for the buses. Are the kids coming in? I couldn't tell if there were stairs between them. Are the kids coming off buses and going through the kindergarten and 1st grade hallways? Or were there stairs there? I couldn't tell.
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me get there real quick, sorry. Getting there. 1 or 2 more.
Almost.
Okay, so this is the upper level. This is the lower level. So On the layer cake, this is the lowest level.
Yeah.
This is the busing level. And this is kindergarten on the left and first grade on the right. At the end, where those arrows are,
Yeah.
that is a very large staircase, and this is a large staircase.
Okay.
So essentially, what the district has done, they have rearranged the layer cake while we've been designing and trying to figure out how everything was going to work logistically. And the intention is that the smallest kids are on this ground floor so that busing is relatively easy and directive. Second grade through fifth grade will use the staircases. So
Okay.
if you're a second grader, you come off the bus and you just come up one level and you're in your wing. No one goes through your wing. Same thing with kindergarten. If you're down here, no one is going through kindergarten to get to their bus. So we can use the corridor space to prep for busing and things like that, and there is no disruption, and it can be quite a bit simpler. This is not a new concept, but this is probably one of the better organizational concepts that we've been able to do just because of the arrangement of the site and how it is put together. And partially, I'm going to give credit to the district's administrative team. They really are the ones that figured out all the wayfinding. Any other questions? Yes? Ready? Oh, sorry.
Oh, you took one of my questions. I had two questions. So my second question is, and I know you said you weren't going to talk a lot about security, but I've seen a lot of red arrows about where there is entries in addition to the main entrance with the vestibule where you said there will be security measures. What about all these other, there was a gym entry, the bus entries, will there be security measures at those access points as well as the individual classrooms?
Yes. So, first of all, security and safety, I kind of put them together, right? We have to have enough exits out of the building to be able to be safe and follow the fire code, number one. So that is a natural in any building. So all of these, any big school has multiple exits. The reality is, though, one of the things that we do is we actually do what's called the systems thinking format. Every door on the outside of the building has a plan for that door. They are all electronically controlled. So as an example, if you come out onto the playground, on the kindergarten through second grade playground, that door access point is actually electronically controlled. Teacher will have a badge to allow them to go in and out, but unless you have that badge, you can't get in. You can always get out. And so all the doors are controlled that way. Once the school is in lockdown, when I say that from the point of view is once school is started, the focus is on the main entrance. No other, there shouldn't be any other access going on for the rest of the doors unless it's maintenance personnel or administrative personnel. And in the morning, we'll see teachers accessing from their local parking areas to get into the building, but they have key cards also. So the only doors that are open are really the front doors. Does that answer the question?
What about like individual classrooms where there be like locking mechanisms or something? I know there's fire codes and stuff
Yes.
that come into play, but are there considerations for the individual classrooms?
Yes, the district has an actual special locking mechanism on every classroom door that is planned. They also have that in place today in all of the rooms in the district.
They're going to start in this school, so that's why I don't know that
Yeah.
because they'll start here. Well, actually, wait, one of them will start here. The other one will be in sorry. When I hear that this is going to be done in 2023, I'm like, oh, that's not that far away, but he'll be in like first or second grade so I don't know that now because they're not in school.
Yeah, your 2025
2025, see?
Is the plans for getting in. But there is, the school district works really hard currently right now to have a plan of sheltering and exiting in every single space. So there are degrees of security as you go through the building. One of the things I mentioned about public versus private, each one of the classroom wings can be completely separated off in an emergency. And compartmentalizing the building is really important. We tend not to talk about that too much in this format, but it is important.
I'm asking for special education. If a teacher is coming from the outside to give a special sort of therapy, hearing
Great question. And I apologize since the plan's so small for us to see, but on every floor, we have specialized support space. So we do have a space for OT and PT. We do have space for psychologists and counselors on every floor. We do have space for classrooms for autism support, classrooms for emotional support, English as a second language. All those spaces are all in here. Life skills, there are multiple classrooms for life skills. There are cool down spaces, there are sensory rooms. One of the things that'll be, I think, super special in the end when it comes to the actual classrooms of this building, it will be like nothing else that you've got in the district, because the school district has actually been able to tailor those spaces to the actual activities of those support teachers. Currently, right now, you know, everyone has gone into these 1950s buildings and just tried to figure out a way to convert a closet or whatever. But in this particular opportunity, we get to actually talk to those teachers and say, how do you want it arranged? How do you want your room? Where do you want cabinetry? What kind of cabinetry? What works best for your relationship with those students? All those kinds of things. That's really the fun, frankly, in my opinion.
You know, if I could make one comment just to add on to that. I don't know if all of you know, but in Bethel Park, our special ed population is about 17%. That's about 50 to 100% higher than districts around us. And so you can imagine we have we have a huge need for those specialized resources. And trying to manage that across 5 buildings is almost impossible. So we have an opportunity here to, I believe, deliver a better service, but also deliver it more cost effectively, make sure we're using our resources most effectively. And so I think, you know, those are some of the things we didn't get into, but I think they're huge benefits just based on the makeup of our district. So, I'm sorry.
Hi, this actually kind of piggybacks off of something you were mentioning, talking to teachers. So I'm here interested as a parent, but I'm also a teacher in another district and have had the pleasure of working and living through construction in my district. And you've mentioned talking to teachers about what they want, how they're going to use the spaces, and these pictures look incredible. And I've seen a lot of like this where it's like, oh, look at that cool outdoor space. But personally, I can count on one hand the amount of times I've seen classes actually taking place in those spaces. Now, I also teach at a high school level, so it's absolutely different. So I impart a curiosity, impart a suggestion of making sure that every teacher who will use these spaces is brought into the conversation, because there's so many times I hear, we've spoken to all of the stakeholders. And I'm like, well, that's funny, because no one asked me. And then, you know, you're put in a space that you essentially live in, and you have to make work. So I do hope, I'm glad to hear that those conversations are happening. I do hope that they're not just happening in these niche areas, that they really are happening with every educator that's gonna be using these spaces to see, they look awesome, but oh goodness, that the classroom, you know, that's kind of in the hallway and really open and it looks beautiful. But the first thing I thought, thinking of my 7-year-old, was get off the stairs. Like, you're gonna be jumping. And if I'm walking a class of kids through there, trying to make sure that they're not distracted by those things, or trying to hold a class there and there's some kid peeking through the window, I am terrified. I'm never using that space personally. So I just, yeah, like I said, part curiosity of have you actually spoken to everybody, and suggestion that you do.
Actually, I can answer that question. The answer is yes, sort of. And when I say that, we can't force people to show up. But we have made presentations at every single building. The teachers voted on their classroom arrangements. We gave 3 arrangements for the typical classroom. And so we've been doing that. We took that information, they did a survey, and we morphed that into a typical classroom that works by grade level. And then now we'll be going back to finalize. This is how it turned out based on what your survey and what your input was. So at every building, we went and did a meeting for the general staff, anyone that would show up. And so every morning, we did that in the morning and went through that process. And then in between those times, we've been meeting with all the support staff. And they're all invited. Every single teacher in the district can have a voice when it comes to K-5 education. So I hope they take advantage of it. I can honestly tell you, as parents, we are in districts all around and working, and you have fantastic staff. Just their attitude, they're so positive and so helpful, and even if they might not agree with the fact that, this is done one way or this is coming together in a particular way, they have taken themselves out of their current suit of clothes and tried to imagine what it would be like being in this building and how they can make it better and how they can make it good. The other format that we also work hard in trying to get them to explain is they're really designing for other people. They don't own the rooms. You as a teacher, you don't own your classroom. You feel like that. We met teachers that have been in their classroom for 20 years. And you over my cold dead body, will you get me out of here kind of conversation. But the reality is that someone designed the school before you, and the idea is that you're designing the school and the school spaces for the future and for other people to use. It may not be you. You might be retiring by the time this building is built. But we need your expertise, and we want to hear what you think about what it's like, supporting a student with autism or whatever the situation, or just what your general classroom day look like, and how can we make it better. Yeah, that has been a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's worth it. The administration has essentially insisted to make sure that we do get a great cross-section of our school community involved in the building process.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the administration and the board for keeping everybody engaged and informed, engaging the staff, the community, and everybody involved. I'd like to thank Draw Collective and your partners for all the hard work you've done architecturally, conceptually. I'm really loving all of this. Mechanically, though, engineering-wise, there were a couple questions I had. Are we going to be going over any of?
You can ask.
Okay. One of the things, I was on the board through COVID. One of the things that I'm concerned with is when we design this building, keeping in mind sanitation, HVAC that is going to circulate the air, not only for situations like COVID, but every year you have numerous students missing educational time because of flu and cold season. Another thing I'd like to keep in mind is efficiency, renewability, things like that as the design process continues on. Have these things been considered?
Yes, and that's an ongoing process. From a mechanical, electrical, plumbing point of view, the project is approached sustainably. So air quality, we have strict regulations to follow from an air quality point of view. The district is choosing a top-of-the-line system, filtration system, independent controls per room, all the things to increase comfort, maximize fresh air flow. There's a control system that will be placed in the building that's electronic that allows us to be as efficient as possible. When outside air is needed, outside air could be added, but when it isn't needed, it doesn't have to be added. Our old system, like in a building like your current buildings, they just generally just pushing the same amount of volume of air all the time. And so it's a real struggle for the district to have to maintain that, but also from an energy point of view, it's a struggle. So yes, all those conversations are happening. And I forgot what your second part was, I'm sorry. Was it just efficiency?
Efficiency.
Yeah, energy efficiency. One of the problems that we encounter is oftentimes we go into a building and we give it all new mechanical systems and everything like that. But then at the end of the day, the amount of natural gas that you might use or something might go up. Well, part of the difference is that in a 1950s building, the amount of outside air requirements were extremely minimal. And so now all of a sudden, we're bringing in more fresh air and we're having to condition that air as it comes into the building. So there can be an offset. The digital controls help us try to mitigate that. But it is all taken into account. And our engineers that are working on the job, they do schools expertly. They have been doing schools as long as we have, and they are a key component. It's half the project, so really important.
And could you clarify just one thing on that related to efficiency? When we did our high school, I think we ended up with a LEED gold standard level. I think platinum is the highest. Do you know, are we targeting a certain LEED standard here?
We are not achieving, we are not doing the paperwork to be able to get LEED certification. That's additional money the district's choosing not to spend. But the systems that are being put into play all meet LEED requirements and could easily get approval.
Okay.
So this building could be LEED certified. The insulation and the building envelope, all of the fresh air, all of the natural light and the views, all of those things are all LEED principles, sustainable principles that are imbued in the design.
Sir? Are there GIZA credits being applied to this project?
Good question. I can't answer that question.
Sir, one thing, I noticed in your plan there, is there a plan for severe weather events? In other words, safe rooms where the students can walk into multiple classrooms in case of tornadoes and all types of events?
Yeah.
I would figure, is that lower level something?
No, actually, it's a great question. So in this building, what we've done is we've actually designed the main gym as a shelter. So the main gym actually is a tornado shelter or heavy storm shelter. It is a separate structure from the rest of the building. It includes restrooms and a unique mechanical system to itself so that the entire building can shelter in place.
Is that what, 10%, 12% of the budget?
I can't answer that question. It is.
Going into 24, 25, I guess that would go up so much?
I haven't actually looked at it as a percentage, but it is significantly more than when we didn't have to design shelters. It's probably at least $1 million more to the project just to create a shelter. To give you an idea, all of the walls are hyper reinforced with concrete. It's got a concrete roof on it. So it is a little bit of a bomb shelter in of itself. And it is an expensive endeavor, but it is also part of the code requirements now.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Good question.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify, you said kindergarten and first grade will have a bathroom in each classroom, correct?
That's correct.
And then second and third grade and fourth and fifth will have girls' bathrooms and boys' bathrooms?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So one question, should I just give the answer? So the question here was, and this relates to some of my opening statements that I probably should have made. One of the drivers related to our strategic plan is that all-day kindergarten was a high priority. And so we're designing this building to have all-day kindergarten, okay?
I saw another hand.
Right here. So I want to go back to the population. I'm thinking about how they're going to get around the building. Do you have a plan for ramps and maybe a wheelchair or things such so that they can get around?
Yeah, there are actually 2 elevators in the building. So we have one elevator along the park path, the main access point, so on the public side of the building, and then out in the classroom wing where that connector is another elevator. So essentially, if a student or a teacher is handicapped and they need to use the elevator, or let's say you just had a broken ankle and you need to get to the bus, we have elevators associated near the bus side as well as along the public park path scenario.
Okay, so like for a fire drill, we would need to get out quickly and not be able to access elevators, or we shouldn't be on an elevator during a fire, so.
That's correct. Each one of the staircases are an area of rescue assistance and for those kinds of activities, or that kind of an emergency. Mm-hmm.
First floor and second floor egress out ground level as well.
That's true. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Were any outside safety consultants hired for this, understanding that there's going to be so many children in one school?
One of the things that we do is we work with the fire department and the police department. And so there's meetings with them to talk about safety, to talk about how they deliver on the site as well as in the building. And so we go through that process. That's the key process. The district follows state recommendations when it comes to internally what to do in the building, safety-wise.
Will there be security?
Yes. Yeah, security internal and on the site. There's actually a special security room, command center inside the building, and how it gets staffed is yet to be determined, number of staff and all that kind of stuff. We kill it? Couple hours.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Engen.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you all for coming.
No other questions? So I just want to thank you all again for coming here tonight. Hopefully you learned something, had a chance to ask questions, even if you didn't get all the answers. Those are the things we'll be working on over the next few months. I'd encourage all of you to come to our facilities meeting. We have them every month, second Tuesday of every month, 7 o'clock at the administration building. Normally, Mike took off, but normally it's just him there. And we really encourage more of you to come, ask questions. Same thing we did tonight. This is really helpful to the overall design process. And like I mentioned before, it's always great if you have your design right before you start building, okay? And all the questions that you're asking will help us with that design. So, any last questions? Yeah.
Anticipated class sizes we're looking at, for each.
So another part of our strategic plan, I guess everything we're doing here is related to the strategic plan that was based on, the primary focus was how are we going to achieve a better academic, environment. And, what we have been building towards is something around 20 students per class in, kindergarten, and not growing much more, under 20 in kindergarten, not growing much more beyond that. Today, if you look around in our buildings, I think it's Penn probably has the lowest number. You may find some classes there that have 15. And then you go to Washington or Franklin, and Memorial, you have classes with 25 or 26. And, every year, maybe some of you have been coming to the school board meetings because you see your child is going into a class of 25 or 26, and one of your friends has a child going into a class of 15 or 14. It's not fair, okay? And of course, we understand that you would like to have similar type of class sizes, but that's really hard to balance from a staffing level. But also, the solution is redistricting, and sending kids to different schools, and I haven't met many people that are in favor of that either. So, for a number of these things we've talked about that were outcomes and goals of the strategic plan, what Draw Collective has come up here really addresses a lot of those goals. Anything else? I saw her hand first, so let me go. Okay.
Sort of related to the class size and student ratios and stuff. One of the things that we love so much about the neighborhood schools is how, the kids are together. There's very few classes. Even if they're not in the same class with another kindergartner, they see them on the playground. They go to first grade, maybe they have, 10 kids from their class, and now they know a lot of the kids. How do you plan to address that with so many more classes at each grade level? The kids aren't having to re-meet all the kids every time they show up to start a new grade.
I think that's, it's a question that we maybe haven't addressed yet. I know Dr. Walsh, but it's something that it's not insurmountable, okay? I mean, we've got the rooms. Addressing the question that you just asked is a lot easier to do in the same building than try to balance all the other things, that we have to do across different buildings.
they were talking about, I can't remember all the terminology, but kind of like maybe the house, like the 4 classes. Is that idea that these 4 teachers are kind of sharing responsibilities and the kids within those classrooms are spending time together?
That's a good question. Good, thank you.
Our kids aren't in elementary school yet, but their first bus ride experience will be in elementary school, and I've heard other neighboring districts, we have friends there or relatives, and they say, oh, our kid's on the bus for an hour every day, or hour and a half every day to and from school. With this new school, like, our kids, they would go to George Washington, it would probably be like a 15, 20-minute bus ride for them. Do we anticipate bus rides being longer for children now, like sitting on the bus being longer, seeing that they're going to have to all go to this one school instead of like a little neighborhood elementary school?
So right now, the longest ride we have on our schedule is a 25-minute ride, and that would be coming here to the NAMS property. So we don't anticipate it getting any longer than that. We have the same number of buses doing the same neighborhood runs. It'll just be going different roads. Ending up here.
It was the size of the district, and other districts are bigger, but I'm just thinking like there's probably going to be more bus stops and more time spent on the bus. Is that something that we are anticipating, but you're telling me?
Not necessarily more stops, because rather than picking up the kids and taking them to Memorial, you're picking up the kids and bringing them here.
It would be kind of the same route?
Yes.
I see, okay.
In fact, I mean, I think each bus, there could be less stops because, we've got K through 5 on every bus. I would imagine the buses are going to fill up faster and they're going to be on their way to this site much quicker than they may today.
I have a question. Is there going to be a nurse's station on each floor? Just like if, I see it's on the middle, but if my kid's in first grade and pukes and is in the bottom ramp,
Yeah.
that's like your case and down a hall, and
I mentioned earlier.
that's pretty far.
There's a principalship on every floor dedicated to 2 grade levels, as well as a satellite nurse's office. So.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks again for coming tonight. And again, please keep in mind, second Tuesday of every month. And feel free to come and share feedback with us there also. Thank you.